Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Bold American Podcast presented by Barstool Sports. You got me and Ryan today. Sans chiming in. You'll hear from Rob a little bit later in the interview we have on today's episode, packed episode. We'll get into the last 72. We are going to recap the latest Taylor Swift album that is sweeping the nation here on Bold American Podcast because we have a resident Swiftie. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, but I would not consider myself a Swiftie, but apparently we do have a Swiftie. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to recap the big super secret to-do meeting that Secretary Pete Hegseth had with all of the generals and admirals across the military last week. And that will lead us right into the government shutdown that, as of this recording Monday afternoon, is still shut down, possibly with no end in sight. Who knows? We'll get into that. All right, let's start with last 72. Ryan, how you doing? What's going on? Last 72.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Last 72 has been great.
Great? You would say great?
Well, I'm okay. Yeah. I'm not talking about Philly sports. I'm going to talk about what I did in the last 72 hours, and that was closed out the Travis Manning Foundation 9/11 Heroes Run Race Series. So
how many did you guys do?
100 worldwide.
That's bananas.
Yeah. Worldwide. So we have them on Navy ships, over in Europe, Germany. It's all where our service members are stationed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, but that's still pretty cool because we have obviously a presence all over the world. I didn't realize that it was all over the world. That's very cool.
Yeah, most of them are here in the United States, but this race series started in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 15 miles outside of Philadelphia, small town. And we always close out the race series where it started. So I was here yesterday. Thousands of people came out. And it's just awesome. It's like, when you go to something and you just feel injected with the American spirit, you feel it at Army Navy, right?
You leave the event and you're like, all right, I'm ready to save the world.
Yeah.
I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get to do it every year. And yesterday was no different. And it was just awesome. And I ran with my dad. I've actually, in 17 years of doing these heroes runs, I've never run one with my dad. And so yesterday, my dad shot me a text. He was driving home from Annapolis. He was at the Navy Air Force game. And he said, hey, I'm coming in hot. You want to run with me? And I wasn't going to run yesterday because I'm training for Marine Corps Marathon. So I did a long run on Saturday. And I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely run with you, Dad. And so we ran. And my dad is 70. He's going to be 73 years old.
Your dad looks great for 73. I didn't realize that was his age. I mean, I kind of had an idea of how old he was. Yeah. But he looks fantastic for 73.
He looks fantastic. And he's so in shape. And the whole time we were running, he was just high-fiving police officers and volunteers and talking the whole time. And it was a great experience. So, so did that. So that was the great part. The not so great part was Philadelphia did not have a great weekend for our sports. The Phillies lost and they were up and then they were down. And, the Dodgers are definitely a juggernaut for us, but we're playing again tonight. I got my Phillies sweatshirt on. I remain hopeful.
By the way, I have to say about the Phillies, that's one of my favorite uniforms across sports. That color combo, the maroon and baby blue, I guess you could call it. Yeah. It's just it's a good color combo. The way
we got this, we got the Kelly green with the Eagles. The Eagles, I don't know what to say. Listen, I talk so much about the Eagles that I now have people in my DMs that I don't even know that just send me my DMs blew up as soon as the game was over with people just trolling me, which is so
that's
ridiculous.
when you know you got the pulse of the people when people can't wait to tell you.
They could not wait. They could not wait. But listen, we were bound to lose a game. We're 4-1. That game was shitty. We got to change our offense. Something's not clicking. I get it. I'm not going to, make any excuses, but go ahead. What are you going to say?
Well, no, I was just going to say the NFL is ridiculous. People, I mean, the Bills got upset. and, the Eagles lost, and there's going to be a whole bunch of other instances this year, as there are every year, where there are big upsets. And I'm not breaking any news, but the talent level, the disparity of talent in the NFL is minuscule. So the idea that the old trope of any given Sunday, it really is true. I mean, obviously later in the year, more injuries, teams start to fall back and the better teams start to emerge. So it becomes less likely. But we're right in the heart of the season where absolutely it's not crazy that the Eagles lost, because the other idea that a team can go undefeated when it's only happened once in history, and then obviously the Patriots did it in the regular season but lost the Super Bowl. So teams are going to lose games. It's not the end of the world. I still think the Eagles have a very, very good team.
Yeah, and I honestly, I look at it as a way for us to like make some adjustments now. So, I'm good with that. And I mean, in the sports world, the bright spot of the weekend was Navy beating Air Force. I know you think that's completely insignificant, Connor, but the fact
I don't think it didn't have any juice. No one was talking about it.
Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was
talking. I put a poll. Did you not see the poll? Nobody.
No, I don't follow. I don't follow your polls. No, because that's just not true. Blake Horvath is breaking records. That Heidenreich is, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He's breaking records. Like here's what I'm going to say, because we've had a lot of behind the scenes texting about this and you telling me no one cares. I'm going to tell you, I think that makes you look ill-informed for you to say that no one cares, for you to act like it's insignificant that Navy is 5-0. I mean, I'm not even saying anything about Army. And I get that you have I don't know if the word's hatred, maybe it is hatred, but I get that you have a deep disdain for Navy football.
That's such a polite way to put it, but it's accurate.
But it feels like you're like, when you make those statements, like it feels like it's a coping mechanism for you. You don't know what else. You're like, no one cares, but like people care. People do
outside
care.
Of the Air Force and Navy communities, I don't know how much juice that game had, because the unfortunate reality is Air Force went into the game 1-4 or 1-3. So just in terms of, go ahead.
You know as well as I do, when it's Air Force playing Navy or Air Force playing Army or Army playing Navy, you know that records don't mean much.
No, they don't. I mean, you can just go a couple years back to when Air Force was 7 or 8-0 in the country, top 25, and Army was 1-5.
Right.
And we smacked them in the mouth and beat them badly. So, and I think we saw that play out because, if Navy, because I will say, I watched the game. I was flipping between, it was tough because Army was playing at the same time. So basically when there was a break in the action in the Army game, I was switching back and forth between both games. If Navy doesn't make that play at the end, and I mean, they did, so it doesn't matter, but they made a great defensive play where they interrupted that pitch and knocked it down and then recovered the fumble to stop Air Force. I mean, it was a great game. So the idea that Navy could have lost is very much there. I don't know. And I think this is more of an indictment on how much Air Force's program has fallen off. So I'll tone down the Navy rhetoric right now for a minute and ramp up my Air Force disdain. Their program, and I'm colored by my own experiences and then the years following that. But their whole thing was like Army and Navy play for second or whatever. And the reality of it is, if you look at the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, and I don't want to go too deep into Academy football, but they were like top dog. But I think in the last, we'll say 10, 15 years, that script has been flipped. And it's really just been, back and forth with Army and Navy. And, I think Army having a slight edge when you look at Commander-in-Chief's trophies. So when I say it has no juice, I think it's more because Air Force hasn't been relevant even in their own conference. There have been years where they've been charging for the top of the Mountain West. They're not in the discussion. And I think the other thing that's hurting Navy this year is the American is stacked. So right now, unfortunately for Navy, there's like 4 other teams that are going to get the nod for the college football playoff before Navy does, unfortunately. So they would have to. There's still time, but they essentially, I think Navy right now, and I don't have a crystal ball. Assuming their season plays out similar to how Army's did last year, they would have to absolutely beat Notre Dame and then win the conference for them to be in the college football playoff. Otherwise, they still have a chance to maybe make the conference championship, and then Army Navy is a separate thing. But it's just a tough year because the American is stacked.
Yeah, you have South Florida, Memphis, and North Texas, who are top of the conference with us. Where's Tulane at this year, though? Tulane, Tulane's
they have one loss to Ole Miss. They have one bad loss to Ole Miss.
So when you say what you just said,
I was going off of who we played.
That's all totally legitimate. I agree with that. But you just can't say no one cares because people are talking. They're 5-0 with a lot of national headlines, Washington Post, Sports Illustrated, ESPN. Like people are talking about them. So I'm just trying to help you out. What
national headlines are you talking about? I'm not taking anything away from the game they had this past weekend where you had a couple guys put up career stats, but I just don't see people talking about Navy. I feel like it's an afterthought.
Are people talking about Army?
No, we're 2-3. So why would anyone be talking about
All right,
Army?
I'm just making sure that you're
no, we're clear on that. Yeah. Okay.
But if anything, we're 3-0 in the conference, and that's all you can do is beat who's in front of you. We're 3-0 in the conference, 5-0 in the season, and then the month of November will be a huge test for the Navy football program. You have North Texas, who's undefeated right now. You have Notre Dame, you have South Florida, and you have Memphis right before Army. So we're going through the ringer right before we play Army. But if we get through that first game, obviously we have to get through Temple and Florida Atlantic, no overlooking people. But if we get through that first game, there's going to be a national conversation about the Navy football program.
I'm just saying that's a big if, and I'm telling you because
those are
Army experienced this last year. Army experienced this last year, undefeated in the conference, won the conference, going away against a Tulane team that everybody was talking about for the college football playoff and completely obliterated them. And they were that weekend when they were deciding who was going to be in the college football playoff. Army's name was mentioned. Ultimately, we saw that Army didn't make it. Due in large part probably because we lost so badly to Notre Dame. But it's just tough sledding ahead for Navy. But all that said, again, I just don't think a lot of people were talking about it outside of the Army and Air Force or Navy and Air Force circles because Air Force was nothing to write home about. Although it ended up being a great game. It was
a great game. My dad was there. He said the energy was high. Secretary Hegseth was there. And fun fact, they actually broke a Guinness World Record. So they had the largest number of people doing push-ups simultaneously. So it was like, I forget what the number was, but that's kind of fun. So.
That's a you go to a meeting and you're sitting around a group and everyone's got to share a fun fact. That'd be a fun fact. Hey, I'm part of a Guinness World Record.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Mm-hmm. My daughter was on watch, so she wasn't part of the world record. So.
Oh, that stinks. So she wasn't even at the game?
No, I think she was fine with it. I think
but see, people forget about that they have to do stuff on the weekends. That stinks.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
How does it work actually at the Naval Academy in terms of when they're allowed to leave post and can stay off of post overnight?
I know like Liberty plebe year is pretty limited. You get like you can like earn them, right? Like you get them based off like they all got a weekend because we beat Air Force. My daughter got an additional weekend. You get them for football wins. She got an additional one because she maxed her PT. So you can earn them for different things. I think maybe they get like 3 or 4 plebe year. She seems to have a lot more Liberty this year. So, but I don't really know the exact how it works. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was me. What about you?
Yet another birthday party.
Oh my God.
For our friends.
We live such different lives.
Yeah. Just different season of life. I was at this one of those places that has, everything is in a ball pit, but there's a ball pit and you climb through things and there's slides. So it was, it's a big germ center essentially, but it was our friend's 4th birthday party.
Were you at the pumpkin patch too? Didn't I see a picture of you guys, or was that the weekend?
That was
before?
last weekend. That was the weekend
sorry.
before.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember if I did anything on Friday evening. I don't think I did. Maybe I did. I can't remember because I'm still operating on our little guy is not sleeping through the night yet. To be expected. They don't start to do that until like 2 or 3 months, but I'm just having a hard time remembering things.
You look tired.
Thanks. That's really so nice of you to say. So anyway, but I am excited. I'm able to get to my first Army game this weekend coming up. So I'll be there in person.
Who are they playing?
Charlotte.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
So, 17.5 point favorite right now. So hopefully that holds out.
Yeah.
But anyway, this past week, another big event, as it is usually recently. Taylor Swift released her most recent album, The Life of a Showgirl. And I have some thoughts, but I will reserve them till after you go, Ryan, because I guess I'm learning. Would you say you're a Swiftie?
Yeah, I'm a Swiftie, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. More than my daughters. Yeah, I'm a Swiftie.
Okay. So what did you think of the album?
So album dropped Tuesday at midnight. Was it Tuesday? Are you picking up that sound?
Yeah.
It's freaking the lawnmower. Hold on.
I was gonna ask who's mowing.
Oh, is that you, Ryan?
Yeah. That's my son. I have him mowing the lawn. No.
That's
okay.
Good. That's good. I always had to mow the lawn. Well, actually, I helped my dad. Me and my dad did it together growing up, but I always think that's a great thing. I don't like people doing my lawn. Anyway.
Okay. So yes, I am a Swiftie. Album dropped at midnight. I stayed up in case anyone was, so, I think that, kind of tells you a little bit about where I am in the Taylor Swift universe.
Okay.
I stayed up. I listened to it all the way through. And my first take on it was like, okay, all right. I woke back up. I've listened to the album probably no less than 10 times through so far. I love it. I absolutely love the album. I'm seeing a lot of the hate, and my whole assessment on it is people like Sad Taylor. And I have always been the first to say when, because I get a lot of like, you're a 45-year-old woman and you like Taylor Swift like you do. And I'll say, like, she's a lyrical genius. She's a singer, songwriter. Like, you can't take away her talent. And so, I understand.
Well, I was going to say, I completely agree. I think you can make the argument for our generation, and I say generation loosely, like in the last 20 years, let's say, she is the best songwriter out there in the game. You can make that argument. I don't think she's the best songwriter ever, just because she's up against some titans. Maybe she'll continue to write and compete in that conversation. But she's very talented.
And we've had discussions about this before, you and I, on this show. But the hate that is coming off this album is because it's a poppy album. It's a catchy album. Most of the songs are pretty catchy. They're lighthearted. And I think, the younger generation was looking for tortured poets department, like just in our
I don't think that was very good either.
Oh, I thought that was genius.
Yeah.
But I love this. And there are some songs that, like Eldest Daughter, which is not like a poppy song, that is hitting me on so many levels right now. I actually wrote about it today on why I'm so affected by that song. There's a lot. And my favorite thing about Taylor Swift albums is right away, people are like, this is about this. This is about this. This is so, actually romantic. It's a diss track about Charlie XCX. You know that Wood is about, Travis Kelce's penis, like all of it. And
definitely is.
Yeah, it 100% is. But Dave put out his top 5. I agree with his top 5. I probably would have changed the order, but I agree with his top 5. He took Wood out because he liked the song, but couldn't have that song in his top 5. But I don't know. I love her. I thought the album's great. I ran to it. It got me through my run. And yeah.
Cons, have you heard the lyrics to Wood?
Yeah.
You've read those lyrics?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Hilarious to me. They're just that she's sitting there writing this down.
Yeah. I think, anytime what I always do, my method is I always listen one time through and I just listen. Then the second time through, I listen and I follow along the lyrics as I'm listening. And then from there, it kind of just varies in terms of how I listen. But I didn't like this album. Okay. And but people who did like it, like, I'm not saying like, oh, you're wrong. Like, I don't think this is a right versus wrong discussion. I think it just comes down to personal taste. I understand how people would say some of her previous work is better because it comes from a place where mentally, emotionally, she was very different than she is in her present day. I don't think, and I mean, that's any artist, like, early Rolling Stones is different from later Rolling Stones, or early Bruce Springsteen is different from later. I mean, it's people evolve, they grow. So to think that everything is going to be the same is ridiculous, because any artist that's not evolving, they just don't last that long. My problem, I think, is when I appreciated what you just said about the album. But what I don't like is when she puts out an album and immediately it's like, God, is the greatest thing ever. It's like, let's just be honest. It's okay that if you don't like it, or if you think it's not as great as some of her previous work, because again, if you look at the history of music, or even just go back, let's say 70 years, and you name the largest artists over the last 70 years, there's not a single person who has hit 1,000, who has batted 1,000 on their entire catalog. Everybody has albums that are not as good. Yeah. So I guess I get turned off when people just fawn all over her. It's almost like if Taylor Swift sang the ABCs, some of these people would say it was revolutionary. Oh my gosh, I can't believe. Did you hear? And I appreciate that the community likes to break everything down. I think that's awesome. And the admiration that they show for her is very cool. And the introspection that they demonstrate when listening to the album, that's all well and good. I think that's good. I heard it and I listened to it a few times and I'm just like, that's not catching me the way some of her other albums caught me. So
fair enough. And go ahead.
Well, and the last thing I'll say is I think, and I tweeted that today, I didn't really get too many people coming at me for it. I think people are afraid to say that because they think like they're supposed to say that everything she does is the greatest thing ever. And if they are honest, then it's somehow an insult to her. But again, I don't know that it's bad or good. I don't like this album as much as I've liked other albums of hers.
Yeah. And I think that I would actually say the opposite. I think that there's a lot of people on TikTok, there's a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon, like calling her out, kind of saying
I've seen a lot.
And I actually felt like I was in the minority being like, I kind of love this album. Yeah. I love that. Do you know what I love about this album? I love that you can see how in love she is. And I know that's annoying to people because, her and Travis Kelce, they're overplayed in the media. That's a fact. But they're real people. And, I can feel the love. I feel the love between them. And I like it. It's refreshing to me. I was like, I like this,
I mean, she's obviously had very public relationships before. And I don't want to wade too deep into these waters because, again, I'm not a Swiftie.
I love it.
But no, I just don't want to have anyone come for me. But it seems like, and obviously, like, because she's not with all of these other guys, like, she's had all these failed relationships.
Yeah.
And obviously, this one is still, relatively new. So the fact that she's already engaged and conceivably going to spend the rest of her life with this man, I wish them the best. And I hope that she doesn't have another failed relationship. It's just interesting to see it, almost like this is the first time she's doing this well, whereas every other relationship has been really crappy for the duration of the relationship, where, to your point, it seems like she's genuinely happy and really likes this guy. And if it almost seems a little like cheesy and corny and maybe immature, like middle school-ish, it's just because
it is.
That's how she feels, and that's fine.
But that's how you feel when you're in love for the first time, and real love that's like, so I'm like, I love this for her. I love, and here, I'm going to say two more things. I know we don't want to spend the whole time talking about Taylor Swift. When I listened to The Fate of Ophelia, I was like, oh my gosh, I connected with it. It was like she was saved. And yeah, it's Travis Kelce that saved her, which is kind of freaking hilarious. But, but the one thing, and you touched on it, the one thing I don't do is I do the same thing as you. I listened to it at midnight. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is revolutionary. I listened to it. I was like, all right, give it another listen tomorrow. I woke up and I continued to listen to it, continue to watch the lyrics. I'm like, all right, I like this song. This is catchy. Again, I'm not like, I like this album. I'm a fan of this album. I watch these watch parties. There are also Barstool personalities that do this. And they sit and they play the songs. And it's the first time they're hearing the songs. And they're sitting together and they'll be like a duo. And there's multiple people that do this online. And it's like they're listening and they're looking at each other. And they're like, and first time they hear the music. And then like a line hits. And, they both look at each other and they're like, oh, like, I don't do that. I'm like, come on, you're just hearing this song for the first time. You are not that affected by it. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah. Sands, are you a Swiftie?
Not since like 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, in 8th grade, my 8th grade girlfriend, our song was Love Story. So I still got every word down to that. But since then, not so much.
That's a great song. Great song.
It is. Cool. It did.
No, I've heard amazing things too about her live performances. I know, Ryan, you've seen her live. I've never seen her live. I would love to see her live.
Yeah, I think she's fantastic.
I think seeing her because obviously every musical act has fans. I think there are some musical acts over the history of time that kind of transcend that. She's in that pantheon in terms of how diehard her fans are. Yeah. So I think I would like to see that. Aside from the fact that she's very talented and I like a lot of her work, I would like to experience it with all those people just to see them react in real time. So
cool.
Good on her. All right. Something I am glad I wasn't at, though, was the meeting last week that Secretary Hegseth had with all the admirals and generals. And obviously everybody had an opinion about it. And some people liked it. Some people thought it was a waste of time. What did you guys think of it?
Wait, why were you glad you weren't there?
Because the idea of just sitting through that lengthy of a conversation, I don't like sitting through meetings of that length for any topic. I'm not as verbose as I am. And, my buddy Large likes to say, like, you ask Connor to the time, he's going to tell you how a watch was made. So I'm not, I struggle with brevity myself. So that's probably why I just don't like to sit and listen to one person talk for that amount of time.
I mean, I can give you my opinion on it. I think everything that Secretary Hegseth said was accurate. I find it hard to believe. You can talk about how the message was delivered, the forum, what's the right word here? You could talk about how, I'll just say you could talk about how it was delivered. I would find it hard to believe, like, who's going to disagree with the message, though? Really? Like, get back to what we do. We're war fighters, right? That's what the military is there for. And you can't be overweight. We've talked about this. Like, it's not a good look. And it doesn't win wars. And it doesn't preserve our national defense when you got a bunch of fat service members walking around. That's a fact.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I'll just interject one point there. for so long now, and I mean, for the duration of the time that I've been talking about the military, the argument about women in combat versus not allowing women in combat, there's an argument to be made about fat people in combat too. Like if somebody is going to pass out if I ask them to run 200 yards, is that somebody I want in my platoon?
Correct.
So that's part of the discussion too, but continue.
I mean, that's my take on it. Like, I think whether or not you liked the way the message was delivered, I had no issue with the message that was delivered. The message that was delivered should be the message that's being delivered to our military. That's my take.
Yeah. Sans?
I'm trying to get this quick. My dog's going crazy. I don't know. It kind of feels like they were just touching base. What are we, like a year into this term now too? So now they're just they want everyone on the same page. Like, all right, let's all collect, make sure we have the same ideas and stuff going forward. And so you can iterate stuff like that. Like, all right, we're tired of seeing these fat generals, which again I agree with. So I think Ryan kind of hit it. I wasn't super locked into it, but yeah.
So here's a little inside scoop too, in terms of height and weight standards and PT tests. I'll just say, I think it's pretty easy as you progress in the ranks and you take certain jobs, especially at the Pentagon. No one's really checking you on those. I know plenty of buddies who are still in who went years without taking a PT test because you're assigned to certain units. The only time I think PT is super enforced is when you're a line unit and you're 03 and below. Beyond that, you can get away with not getting taped, not getting measured, not passing PT tests.
Well, I'm going to interject there. Maybe in some service branches, but I can tell you, my dad served till he was almost 60 years old, and the Marine Corps does it different. They just do.
The Navy's a joke. I can say that. I can speak on experience there. Like we had 12 and a half minutes to do a mile and a half, went from 18 to 24. And then once you get
Navy has more lax.
Yeah. Once you get to 25,
I'm not even talking about
but
I'm not even talking about the standards. I'm not talking about the standards. I'm talking about the fact that they actually enforce what they say. Like in the Army, you're supposed to, when I was in, you were supposed to be tested PT at least twice a year. And some units do it even more than that. But again, and I saw it because I had jobs in the Army where basically no one kept tabs on me. I could kind of do my own thing. I came into the office at 9 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't required to be at a PT formation at 05:30 anymore. And believe me, it was great. I wasn't complaining, but I also took care of my physical fitness and I was never a problem. And the other problem is too, I think a lot of times you see these people in some uniforms and you can kind of like hide some fat. But then you start going to the Pentagon, you have to wear certain uniforms and it's a lot harder to hide that fat. So I agree with the messaging that he delivered and watch, I'm going to play both sides of this.
Of course. Now
people are going to say, well, it was a waste of time to bring all those people in and then just publish these 11 or 12 memos that go out to the entire Department of War, when it could have been an email or it could have been a video call. And I agree with that. However, think about this. And as you're listening, think about this. When you're on a Zoom or you're on a video call or you're required to be in a video call, how easy is it to either A, just not be there, or B, have it playing and you're doing 3 other things? So in the sense that he wanted to get everybody's attention, well, there's no better way to get everybody's full attention than to put them in a room. I would say 2 things. The fact that it was televised, I think, for me, took away a little bit from the seriousness of it all, because now it almost seems like, what are we talking about? Because it can't be that secret if we're blasting it out to the public. But again, I'll play the other side of that. It's like, well, we're trying to show to the public, this is what we're trying to display in our military. So I think ultimately it was an interesting way to enforce these new standards that are being pushed down from the top. That's where I will say. And I think that's about a middle of the road take as I can come up with. So
love your middle of the road take.
Yeah. I guess I see it from all angles. I don't know.
Okay.
But something that is not middle of the road is our government is currently shut down.
Yeah.
And I mean, the threat of the government shutting down, and I'd have to go back, and I'm pretty sure the government has shut down before. Actually, I know it has.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you see it on the news, but then everybody kind of goes about their day and they don't really see any difference. But when you are working in the federal government, whether that's in the military or as a civilian working for one of the branches of the government, there is a big change. So, Ryan, if you could just give us a quick overview of where we're at with that right now, I would love to know what's going on.
So basically where we are now, and I'm going to speak more specifically for those that are currently serving, Congress failed to pass a funding bill. So the federal government is officially shut down. What that means is, essential operations continue, but hundreds of thousands of federal employees are furloughed, sent home without pay. Active duty troops are still reporting for duty, but their paychecks are frozen until funding resumes. So they're getting up, they're going to work, they're not getting paid. When you talk about a government shutdown, military families feel it before anyone else. Delayed pays, they have uncertainty with base services, postponed PCS moves and training, all of that is affected. And then the other interesting thing is that DoD civilians are furloughed, cutting into logistics support and maintenance. So when you talk about at service academies, if you are a civilian teacher, you're not showing up for work. So my daughter right now, they'll fill in with military instructors. But it definitely affects service academies as well. Now the good thing is that VA hospitals and benefits remain funded for now. But regional offices and non-urgent services, they definitely can slow down. You feel it there. There have been, and they do this every time, and I think it's bullshit because it comes up every time there's a government shutdown. Lawmakers start doing a pay our troops legislation. Figure out pay our troops legislation when we're not in a government shutdown, right?
Yeah, that shouldn't be.
Yeah. So legislation to essentially guarantee troop pay during shutdown. But until that passes, and I think why are you worrying about that? Just don't unshut down the government. Don't worry about passing other legislation, figure it out. But it maddens me every time we have a government shutdown because it's the men and women in uniform that have to continue to show up. And, the biggest thing is, you want to pass legislation about government shutdowns. Members of Congress are still getting paid because their salaries are protected under the Constitution. You want to talk about some bullshit? That's bullshit. The fact that they allowed our government to get shut down and they are still getting a paycheck while our service members are showing up for work and not, that is the biggest hypocrisy I've ever witnessed in my life. So I know my Congressman Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania, he has continued, and he does it outside of government shutdowns to try and pass legislation that Congress does not get paid. And the fact that can't be overwhelmingly unanimous from every member of Congress that they do not get paid when our government is shut down. Every member of Congress who votes no to legislation like that should not be representing us. It's bullshit. So that's my hot take on that.
I mean, that's a very fair take. I think it's ridiculous that these people that are in a dangerous job and a demanding job in the military are the ones that bear the brunt of this. Yeah. And it's everybody in DC playing politics because that's just the way they are. And, a couple of things you mentioned too, the fact that, I mean, if you serve in Congress and then you get a paycheck for the rest of your life is
you have to do a certain
number of terms. Yeah.
But
right.
not
how
too
many
long.
Terms? No,
I think it's 3. So it's maybe 6 years. It's not, it's not that long, but you think about it, what is happening right now with our government shutdown is the perfect example of what is broken. The people who serve this country are getting punished and the ones who run it don't miss a dime. Like how is that?
How do you put your head to a pillow at night knowing that that's the case?
Yeah.
Doesn't add up. And then the other thing that you mentioned, and it made me think back to a core memory, your daughter having some of her instructors not coming to school. So any other school in the country, they'd be like, cool, we're not having class. No, not at the service academies. You're still going to go. And it reminded me, it was the winter of 2003. West Point got some ungodly amount of snow. Or we were scheduled to get some like ridiculous amount of snow. And sure enough, we got pounded overnight. So that was our first snowstorm for me at school. So I'm like, awesome. Won't have to go to class. No, like 3-4 in the morning, they were out there plowing the snow. They're like, all right, yeah, just put your BDUs on and get yourself to class. There's no hey, we'll stay home.
Yeah. And I think, you also have to like make it up. Like I forget what happened last year. Maybe it was some sort of storm and they were closed. And then my daughter was like, oh no, we have to make these classes up next week. We just start classes at like 6 a.m. It's not like they're like, yay. Yeah. So it's a
no
shame.
Snow days. Yeah.
No snow days.
No, it is. It is a shame. It is a shame. And it's so simple, but it's made overly complicated by our government and the way that people.
Well, I think they shouldn't be allowed to leave. Honestly, they shouldn't be allowed to leave.
Just figure it out.
Figure it out. You don't get to leave.
You're trapped. Yeah. You're locked in until you figure it out. Because guess what? If you legitimately did that and said, you are not allowed to leave this building until you come to a conclusion, they'd come to a conclusion.
Exactly. Exactly.
So anyway, all right. Let's throw it to our interview that Rob did with Waco Hoover, Marine veteran who is on the forefront of the veteran suicide epidemic still. And I think what's bears mentioning about veteran suicide is it's an ongoing battle. And we have so many organizations, great organizations doing a lot of great work, but it's still a very big battle. So we have to continue. I say that to say we have to continue to talk about it until it's eradicated completely, if in fact that is possible. So anyway, let's throw it to that interview.
What's up, everybody? It's Rob here. I wasn't able to make the main recording today due to some work stuff, but I have the honor and privilege of running the part 2 of this week's interview. Of this episode with a great interview with my friend Waco Hoover, who is here on a lovely Monday evening. I think you're in LA, right, bro?
That's right. Yep, Los Angeles. So it's early-ish,
It's early-ish. You can't beat the fucking weather right now on the West Coast, dude. West Coast, best
Amazing.
coast. It's absolutely stunning.
Right.
Yeah. So I've wanted to have you on for probably since the beginning of the podcast. So quick background for everybody. Waco is an old buddy of mine. We've done some great stuff together at his MCon conference here in Vegas. We've also connected on numerous Army-Navy activities, and we've worked together on some influencer campaigns. And so I felt like this would be a really good interview for people to listen to when it comes to just veterans, mental health, the stigma and what is happening around soldier, military, veteran suicide, service member suicide, I think is the correct term. And Waco's doing some great stuff to kind of raise awareness about that really big mega issue. And then Waco's got a cool story himself. And so with that, man, I'd love to kind of just say hey again and let's get into it. So how's Waco doing on this Monday? And kind of tell me about like all the cool shit you got brewing right now.
Well, I'll tell you, you and I share this in common. We both have 2 very young children who, when they sleep and they cooperate, things are fantastic. When they choose not to sleep, it's less than enthusiastic sometimes, or you can be running a step behind sometimes. When
that's how I am today too. By the way, that's how I am today.
But regardless, though, wouldn't change the world. They're a blast. They're so much fun. Being a dad is the coolest thing I've done, hands down, of all the things that I've done. And I know you agree with that too. But yeah, things are great. As we are recording this, our 3rd edition of MCon, you touched on that a second ago, is coming up here in a few weeks in Las Vegas, October 23rd to the 26th. We're expecting about 6,000 participants, active duty service members, veterans,
Amazing.
their families, and otherwise. So, yeah, as it relates to that, like myself, our team, we're heads down, just making sure that that's all going to go off, without a hitch. But otherwise, it's a new week and ready to get after it.
Awesome. Yeah, MCon's great. I went the first year 2 years ago. I think I had the honor of being a panel host.
That's right.
A host for a panel. When we talked, physical fitness, mental health, all that. You had some studs there. So MCon aside though, and we can get into that later,
Yeah.
like how did you find yourself in a position to running a conference that kind of feeds into the veteran community, has verticals outside of the veteran and military community? You've done a great job of kind of coalescing a lot of great Vegas and national brands to your awesome conference. What's Waco's story, out of high school? I know you were a Marine, are a Marine. Could you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So, like many of us, come from a multi-generational military family. Dad served 2 tours in Vietnam, 82nd Airborne. That certainly had its ups and downs and left an indelible print on me, brother, family. Like not a unique story, but one that definitely informs the lens that we view the world through. Grandparents served in World War II, and I remember when then I was a pretty squared away kid. In high school, graduated with honors. Was a varsity athlete in swimming and soccer. And I remember when I told everybody that, hey, I'm going to enlist in the Marine Corps, everyone was like, what do you mean you're going to enlist in the Marine Corps? Like, dude,
Yeah.
you can go to great colleges. If you've got into great colleges, why are you enlisting in the Marine Corps?
What year was this? What year?
This was so 97 is when I enlisted.
Okay.
Yeah. And so just really interesting the feedback and everything you get from certain family members, certain friends, and still very close with most of those people that we were tight with growing up today. But it was just an interesting perspective on that. And so I served my time in the Marine Corps as infantry Marine. I got out in June of 2001, and August of 2001 I moved to New York City, and so started my undergrad at NYU. And so in August 16th, I moved into my dorm room downtown on Cliff Street, right up from right across Broadway from what was then the World Trade Center, and then the South Street Seaport and all that. And so I was out jogging, the morning of 9/11.
No way.
Yeah, it was wild, to put it is an understatement, if there ever was one. And so just being there for all that, it was pretty insane. You know what I mean? And quite frankly, even at the time processing it, I remember I was out. I'll never forget it. I was leaving my dorm room, going out. There was people were like, "Oh, there's a fire in the World Trade Center." Again, at this now we know, knowing what we know, that the first plane had hit, of course, and I didn't know that. So I'm popping out. I've got shorts on, a key, and that's it, and some sunglasses. I'm going for a run up the East River, and so I go for my run up the East River, think nothing of it. On my way back, I turn around. I'm heading back. People were like, "Don't go down there. We're under attack." And I'm like, what do you even talk? None of this even registers, obviously.
There's no social. It's 2001. Everyone knows.
That's correct. That's 100%. So the connectivity that we take for granted today, it didn't exist. And, I remember I finished my run. I was walking up on the cobblestone street part from the South Street Seaport, heading up to Water Street and up to where my dorm was. And that's when the first tower came down, and it was smoke came billowing through everywhere, and just quickly did an about face, back down to this little spot on the north of the seaport, south of the Brooklyn Bridge, and just waited it out with this small group of people who were, a lot of them were freaking out. And I was just like, guys, we're in the safest possible spot we can be. There's no tall buildings around us. If the Brooklyn Bridge goes down, that's not going to get us. Worst case scenario, we can all jump in the East River and we can swim if we need to. Because we just didn't know what was going to happen at that point in time. It was like, holy shit, what just happened? What's coming next? So that was my welcome to New York City.
Wow.
To put it mildly. And I always tell people this, you hear a lot of mixed things, particularly then when you were moving to Manhattan in the city, about safety and people and kindness and all this kind of stuff. And I can't tell you how many people asked me, who were more or less strangers, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need a place to stay?" Because I was new to the city, new student in school. The overwhelming amount of love and caring and mutual support in New York City after 9/11 was incredible. I if I was ever going to fall in love with the city, it was then, and I did. Just the community and connectivity around it for complete strangers in this place that is, referred to as a concrete jungle. And there's oftentimes, these people who just like are just running by you, not thinking anything of you. The stereotypes, and a lot of them are true with Manhattan and people just moving at their own pace. And so that was my welcome to New York City. And we obviously, we were, so where I lived, all of Southern Lower Manhattan was closed. We had to go, NYU had to put us up in dorms north of that, like near Central Park. And anyways, it was a crazy time. And from there, school started back up again after a few weeks, and you kind of got back into it. But that was my welcome to New York City, if you could, you could call it that. And, it was, I always think back on that moment. And then from there, I ended up, after my freshman year, ended up doing an internship at the Cannes Film Festival. And I was doing a bunch of operations, logistics for a bunch of events that were taking place there. And that's where I learned that there was a whole lot more to the world than finance or business. And that's what I was going to school for at NYU. And I was like, come to the Marine Corps. This is what I'm going to do, tried and true. But it opened my eyes to all these things that I just had no idea exist, with media, technology, entertainment, all this. And it was amazing. And I think that's one of the things whenever I'm talking to young people who are coming out of the service or thinking about what's next in their chapter, or even if they're still in the military, you don't know what you don't know. And exposing yourself to new experiences, new industries, new people, it's one of the most powerful ways to figure out what you want to do, and also, what you don't want to do. And so anyways, after that experience with that internship at the Cannes Film Festival, myself and a business partner that I met through that, that experience, we ended up launching a number of media brands, technology companies, event brands. And at one point in time, we owned 40 different media live event brands.
Wow.
On the B2B side of things, the largest one being like 15,000 people and everything in between, from industry publications or across healthcare, constructions, behavioral health, and mental health, and so on. And so just like I said, started a number of businesses. But the through line for all that, Rob, is it didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, golly gee, we want to launch the largest cultural celebration for of military culture.
Right.
It was this series of experiences of launching businesses. Some were terrible initially. Fortunately, they got a lot better, having several exits, investing in other businesses along the way. And, I'll tell you as an infantry Marine, we all know that MOS is arguably, you have the fewest amount of directly transferable skills to, a civilian job. Mechanics, chefs, admin, you've got more than infantry Marines or anybody who had a, infantry MOS. But I will tell you, the thing that was incredibly transferable that nobody talks about nearly enough, or particularly not at that time, was how all of those skill sets of fortitude, determination, doing more with less, grit, grinding it out, sucking it up, all of those things were pivotal for me to be a successful entrepreneur along the way. And so that was a really, really interesting thing that you started to figure out. The edge that I have is not experience on any of these industries. I knew nothing about any of the industries that I was involved in. I was going to school at the time while I was building some of these companies. But what I did have is this insane determination and grit that very few other people, had the capacity to endure. When you're like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Why don't I just go get a job at McKinsey, or pick any example, and anything like that? And the pain and suffering that is all too often the entrepreneurial journey. But I wouldn't change any of it. It's amazing. And so that's a very, abbreviated version about kind of how I made my way, to where I am today, and how we, came up with the idea to ultimately launch MCon and build this thing. And, it was really about, and there's so many other details that weigh into that around, you touched on a little bit, a lot of the work that I do around brain health and suicide prevention and military families are on, entrepreneurship and in workplace. The healthcare side of things is so important. And then there's the defense contracting, the purpose pipeline, service members transitioning from military service to working in a defense tech company or a government contractor. And so all of those things kind of lend itself to being like, virtually every community in this country has its own large scale tentpole celebration of those people. You know, there's an event called Dragon Con, which is like almost 20,000 people, and it's people celebrating fantasy and dragons and all the craziest things you can imagine if that's your thing. But they love it. And then there's the Essence Festival. If you've ever heard of that, it's like 50,000 plus people. It's the largest celebration of Black culture in New Orleans every year. An incredible event. So there's countless other examples. But you and me, our families, our brothers and sisters we serve with, we don't have that. There's no large-scale tentpole cultural celebration of why we wore the uniform, why our families sacrificed in the way they sacrificed. And that's our goal for building MCon, is to create this at scale, tens of thousands of participants celebrating what we did and what we did for our country.
Amazing. Yeah. So that was a lot. I love it. That was such a good story.
Yeah, I word vomited. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's what this is for. So back to 9/11, like, did that, were you wearing Ranger panties on that run, or what were you wearing?
100%. Yeah. Silkies, you know, we call them silkies, but 100%.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Did that moment of your run, you know, marine lungs and everything and amazing cardio conditioning, did that, being in New York City for 9/11, did that set an extra jolt in you to do something in the veteran military space, whatever it may be? But like, one, I mean, what a fucking experience. Two, yeah, like, what did that experience, you know, kind of set you on, business wise?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And, you know, when we're young people, at least for me anyways, you know, everyone has their own journey. There's a certain degree of perspective that I lacked, you know, in a moment like that. But as time goes on and there's more time and distance and space between it, you can reflect on that and see how it really impacted you. So at the time, you know, it wasn't like this pivotal moment, like, hey, I've got to go do this thing or support, you know, people who are struggling with that. Because that was before that. Like, after that, America's longest war, Afghanistan, everything that happened in Iraq. And so it was a very different time with how we looked at it. But I will say, looking at it now, it was amazing to see our country come together, local, national communities come together and be galvanized in support of something bigger in America and our freedom and in protecting each other. That was really, really profound, particularly because I served in peacetime, you know, and when I got out. And so being able to see, growing up in a family where my dad was impacted profoundly during his service, you know, in the 82nd Airborne in Vietnam, and it was not great at all. I struggled with alcoholism, substance abuse, caused marriage with my mom and all that. And so being able to be on the other side of it and see, you know, how we needed to do better and how we must do better supporting this, you know, next generation of warfighter for so many of those that did not get, you know, that same level of support, was something that was deeply, deeply ingrained in me. And at the time, I didn't have any idea how to actually act on that. It wasn't until, you know, a little later, I had more reps under my belt and I understood how, you know, with relationships and, you know, relationships of influence, you know, that can make an impact, how you could do something about that. And that set me on, you know, a path that I've been doing for, you know, 15 years now, focusing on how do we help service members, their families, and not even help. I don't even like that word. How do we support service members and their families to live the best version of their life, regardless of what their experience is? How do we keep pushing the envelope for new therapies, new technologies, new approaches to how we eliminate the stigma associated with asking for help? We've got all the, you know, there's amazing tools and therapies and techniques that are out there, but, you know, the biggest inhibitor for somebody getting access to support they need is raising your hand and asking for help. And so it's a long way of explaining that it is, you know, that experience is something that, you know, I take a step back sometimes and I'm talking to my wife about it. And I'm like, you know, I was in a place that was the equivalent of Pearl Harbor, you know, from back, you know, in the 40s and World War II, in terms of the, you know, the biggest attack, you know, on our country, the magnitude of it, you know, and I think there's a certain degree of responsibility, may be the wrong word, but a certain degree of, hey, I was there for this, and, you know, I saw the impact firsthand, knew personally, like, people who I was working with at the time, they lost family members in the towers. And so how do we take this, and how can some good come out of this horrible incident that happened? And how can we also then learn from that as we're supporting, you know, military families and the warfighter?
Man. Yeah, so I grew up in Germany. My father is a West Point grad, class of 87. Shout out to Ralph. And he met my mother in Germany when he was stationed there, when everyone in the army was still getting posted in Germany. It was like, now it's kind of like you're super lucky if you get that unicorn, spot. But dude, in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, everyone got stationed in Germany. It was just part of like the culture of being an army officer. And so I grew up in Germany, and I was in Cologne, leaving my British private school in my uniform when I saw that happen, around 2:30 to 3 p.m. And, I still remember that to this day. Like just it's ingrained in me and everything. And it's the reason why I went to West Point. It's the reason why I wanted to serve. And I think it'll always leave a mark on our generation, our millennial generation and older. And it's not crazy that the younger generation doesn't even realize it, but there is some extent where that event and that experience of having lived that pre-social media is not, I guess, experienced by folks, that are now 20 years old or 23, 24 years old, which is kind of crazy to say. And so it's not that, I wish they would understand or go through an experience like that, but just to appreciate it better. I feel like it's just lost on younger folks, I think. And I think it's on us, like you and me and everyone else associated with the podcast and the veteran community, to kind of like remind people, like not just on 9/11. That's what my co-host, Ryan Mannion does such a great job with, is like just reminding people of like the good that came from that event and the way it touched Americans and how like unified we were afterwards. Even though I was in Germany, my dad's New Yorker, I never saw Germans kind of help and rally the Americans that were kind of stationed at their unit, and support the consulate and the embassy that I was at. So it's just like incredible to see like such a terrible event and like the positive that came from that. And, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I know for many listeners, it still impacts us today. And there's many of us that enlisted and raised our right hand because of that event, even though we didn't even know maybe all the facts or what really transpired behind the scenes. I think like Americans, us as a society and culture, we do such a good job of rallying together and just getting behind a cause for good or for what we think is good. But so, after 9/11, you get an awesome degree at NYU. All my friends are finance bros out of that institution. So it's awesome to see that you didn't go that route. But so like, what were one of like your, favorite, what was like your favorite experience as an entrepreneur? Like to this day, like what do you look back on pre-social media, mid 2000s, Waco just got his degree. What are you like, or maybe looking back now, what was like the best business experience for you, like that you could kind of equate to the Marine Corps in terms of being in the shit, being in the foxhole, late fucking hours, but like it paid off? Like what company or brand that you started was kind of like that?
Oh, man, most of them is the reality. And some of them, the reality is like it doesn't ever get easier, and that's just the thing. You'll have more experience, you'll be better capitalized, but at the end of the day, building something, it's a journey that you're going on, and there's always unexpected ups and downs. And for me, I'll come back to your question in terms of like, but for me, it was interesting. I really struggled with the ups and downs of it. It was really the highs and lows, where one minute, wow, this is awesome, we're rolling. The next minute, this is really tough. We are literally struggling here. We have a joke. We'd say the light has been temporarily turned off at the end of the tunnel, in terms of how you feel about where you're going and what you're building, with this thing. And that was it was challenging for me. And there was this book, I think, called Peaks and Valleys. Stephen Covey, I think, is the author. He's written a bunch of good stuff, but it was all about this old man and this young man, and about climbing up on top of mountains, and how when you're on the top of the mountain, it is absolutely incredible. The feeling is just, insatiable. You love it. But when you go down in between those peaks and those valleys, it's really hard. But figuring out how to modulate that is something that's really, really important, particularly to entrepreneurs. And now it's like, okay, you get it. You understand the process. It's so much easier, but it still is really, really challenging. And I think probably one of the first businesses that I launched was called the Institute for Health Technology Transformation. This was back in 05 we started. 06 we really got going, leaning into it. And this was all about how the healthcare community is transforming and modernizing with electronic health records, IT, technology, all that. For perspective, in 2008, we were at about 12 or 13% electronic health record adoption across the country in hospitals and health systems. Fast forward to 2015, and it was like 80% plus. So It was a dramatic transformation, and we were at the forefront of all that. We ended up building the number 2 largest media brand and event brand, working with the largest hospitals, health systems, CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, chief medical information officers, for all these incredible organizations. And I had imposter syndrome the entire time, because I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I'm not trained.
You're a grunt, bro.
I'm just a disgusting grunt, an enlisted grunt.
That's amazing.
Getting after it and building things. And but I will say this, education was always a paramount piece of that would give me an edge, or just give you a degree of confidence that you needed. So I did my undergrad at NYU, and I'm going on to business school. But I think it was 08 or 09, if I'm not mistaken, Harvard School of Public Health launched this healthcare IT leadership and strategy executive programs, like a 5-month executive program. You'd spend like a week there beginning, coursework in between, then another week. And it was incredible. I was literally in this class with some of the smartest people in our country who are all building out what is the national strategy for information technology within the country, and within in HHS and other agencies that were deploying billions and billions of dollars. And so this was just this incredible ride that that during that time after the 08 crash, many industries were really struggling, and we had wind in our sails just by virtue of the industry that we're in. And as a part of there was a provision of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act called the HITECH Act that earmarked $40 billion for hospitals and health systems to implement electronic health records and to use them in a meaningful way. And there were all these different stages of meaningful use. And as long as you did it, then doctors' offices, you get $44K per physician. Hospitals, you can get $1 million per hospital. So it was a lot of money that was there. And for systems at scale, there was a lot. But there was also just this massive cultural transformation. So I've found myself at these different points of time in different industries where there's been a sea change, and you've got to really rely heavily on pattern recognition to identify, hey, there's going to be a massive cycle shift here. And anytime that happens, industries are poised for disruption, poised for new ventures, particularly when you're looking at media and live event brands. People need to come together and engage in a way that's more important than ever before, because there's so much industry change. And even with all of the amazing technology that we have now and today, the live event industry is still huge. It's still booming. We still have this
probably bigger than ever, right? Just look at fucking ticket prices for sports and concerts and even expos here in Vegas.
That's right,
dude. Just the value of a ticket, at face value now, is 10x to what it was 10 years ago.
It's crazy. And I think COVID. Well, I know COVID changed that tremendously. And while we were all locked down and, isolating, whether you had your family around or whether people were more lonely.
Isolating. What a term.
Yeah, I know. Right. Terrible term. But the point is that forced us to really appreciate and come running back into craving and appreciating real life experiences with real human beings. And until we have technology where we're plugged into the matrix and we're sitting in the same room, and you can kind of touch and feel each other virtually, we're still going to want that. We're still going to need that, because there's also just this human connection. And I think the military community is probably one of those things more so than a lot of industries. When you feel that connection, that bond, that trust that exists because of that shared service, regardless of, there's nothing, it's so incredible. And getting a bunch of vets or guys and gals who serve together, or even people who can just appreciate that journey, there's nothing like it. It's really, really profound. And again, that in-person experience is something that is absolutely incredible to that. And so I'll give you one example of a business that was a lot of fun. And so we launched this business called X Live, and it ended up becoming the largest annual event and media brand for live entertainment. So it was event technology, it was sports, it was music, all the biggest festivals, EDC and the Live Nation.
Big fan.
All
Shout
those
out
guys. Yes, right. Insomniac, exactly. Pasquale. Hey.
Yeah.
But it was really amazing because we were at the forefront of this term called festivalization. So the festivalization of live events that started to happen, or even with like mainstream like trade shows, you started seeing music acts being dropped into it. And you see this with like AWS and other big tech brands.
reInvent,
like,
dude. I was
that's
running
exactly
that
right.
for 3 years, and not to cut you off, but here in Vegas, I mean, I lived in the Venetian for a month. I mean, it was 2-3 weeks, where I was living in the Venetian pretty much, and AWS through the biggest. I used to work at AWS. People through the biggest developer conference in the world, 100,000+ attendees, and that's not even including contractors, everybody else involved, staff, hostesses, atmosphere models, you name it. But all the events, like you name it, like it's not just about the developer; it's about the experience. And what does the person leave? Like memorable club nights, fucking high caliber, high powered Vegas dinners, experiences, money lost, money won, like business connections in Vegas, the Sphere. Like I don't have to preach to you, but like every event now, I feel like that's how an event is successful into 2026 and beyond. Is it's not just, hey, let me get you on LinkedIn, buddy. It's so what did I take away? What experience was there? Was I on their social medias? Was I reshared? Was there any influencer I could meet? Was I able to interact with a content creator activation? Was I able to meet an athlete? Was I able to go on a podcast? Like all these verticals now, if your event doesn't have it, it's kind of fucked.
It's really true. And then couple that, the experience piece, with the tried and true, what is my ROI for attending this event? And it could be I learned something. It could be I closed a new deal. We have a new relationship, a new partnership.
Yeah.
We would always refer to it as engineered serendipity.
Great phrase.
When you set events, any type of experience up, a small little dinner that we might be hosting for like 20 friends and colleagues, you're thoughtful about who you're going to seat next to each other. And you're like, these people are going to hit it off. If you know you're humans, that you're going to be there well. And it's the same thing for small and large scale events. You try to set it up in a way that people are going to bump into. They're going to have these casual collisions, engineered serendipity, where they're going to be able to develop value. And that could be, value is in the eye of the beholder. Everyone measures that differently. But, people meet their significant others at these big events. People will, again, you'll close a deal, or you're stacking your sales pipeline, whatever it is. That is the whole point of these things. And, it's so funny. We actually, with the agency separate from MCOM, one of the agencies that I co-founded, a group called Impact Group, we're actually doing a big at scale survey all on the power of live event experiences in the military community. And so it'll be released later this fall. The surveys are in the process of coming in right now. And the whole reason why we're doing this is there's not a significant body of data and research that actually talks about the actual value of getting together in person. If you think about so many of the specific events, resources, nonprofits, corporate philanthropy, what do they all revolve around? It's getting us together.
Yes.
Whether it's a retreat for psychedelics assisted therapy in Mexico or Peru on one end, or if it's hey, we're doing an entrepreneurship boot camp for 1 month or 6 months, and there's a pitch competition. The list goes on, but it's all about us getting together and building community. And there's not a lot of data around how powerful and profound that is. So that's something that we're actually be doing, for the first time with on behalf of the military community, so that we can actually validate that to other organizations and other funding partners to be like, hey, it's the thing that you're focused on, career, job, entrepreneurship, mental health, that's cool. But the fundamental power of fostering community facilitating social connections ultimately saving lives. That is powerful, and that's really, really important stuff. And so we're really excited about being able to
That's awesome.
Just talk more about that in a more intelligent way that, is grounded in science and research.
So what's who are some of the partners you're working with on this, like for suicide prevention at scale and education and just like the fostering of those social connections? Like, who are some of the organizations, nonprofits, people that you're working with?
Yeah, so there's a long list, but the American Legion is one of them.
Okay, nice.
Largest veteran service organization in the country. Actually, chair the American Legion's National Suicide Prevention would be the one, and that is a really incredible program. We help stand that up and build out the strategy for how we actually support our members in to save lives at the end of the day. We're doing a lot of work with Columbia University. We actually partner with Columbia on that program. They've got the Columbia protocol, and we actually built it's called Be the One, an app. You could download it on your phone, or anybody can. And it is a very short series of questions that if, like, let's say you or I have a buddy who's potentially in crisis, you go through that set of questions and it will tell us within an 80% plus accuracy, whether that person's at low, moderate, or high risk of suicide.
Wow.
And the reason why that's so important is because of the stigma piece. If you're constantly running people into the ER for having a conversation, being willing to be vulnerable like that, and it's a financial issue, it's a relationship issue, like they don't need to be hospitalized for that, right? In many instances. And so using a scalpel to support our brothers and sisters or anybody who's struggling is so much more important than a blunt instrument. So those are some groups. The Grunt Style Foundation is another group that we do a lot of work with. They're doing some great work there. Again, very different culturally than like a Columbia University or a Legion, but they have a massive footprint of and loyal brand followers that lean into that, which is really amazing to see.
And that's what it's about,
That's right. And the thing that then we also do some great work with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Okay. The NSSF, they're the ones that own and run SHOT Show. It's in Vegas every year.
Oh, yeah.
1,000 plus people.
Awesome.
And so one of the things that we lean into a lot is, the power of influence and culture. And you heard me talk earlier about, well, like, what the hell do you mean by you want to build the largest celebration of military culture in the country? That seems a little, ambiguous. Well, you and I both know there's some great things about the military experience, but there's also a lot of things that we've got to continue to improve and fix about the military experience. And culture is without a doubt the most powerful change agent, undisputed. So have you ever heard of the Edelman Trust Barometer by chance?
No.
So Edelman is this huge global agency.
Oh,
every
Edelman.
year, Edelman,
yeah.
So Edelman, the huge global agency, every year they do this survey of 33,000 plus consumers. Well, what that survey consistently tells us is that consumers trust corporate brands significantly more than media, government, and NGOs. And so the power of, we're talking about some of these big issues around brain health, suicide prevention, other issues, transition, employment, career, all this stuff. Corporate brands, their voices and what they choose to lean into, they've got tremendous power and impact if they do it in the right way, or if they choose to lean into certain issues that are near and dear to their customer base, their employees, the executive team, and things of that nature. And so when we look at a lot of these big issues, we're working really, really hard to bring in those corporate brands. For a lot of the work with the, NSSF, National Shooting Sports Foundation, that's something that we talk about a lot. How can we partner with them and those brands to influence consumer behavior? Like something as simple as secure storage, keeping, having some time and distance between your weapon if you might be in crisis, or just keeping your weapons locked up. Generally speaking, I've got 2 young kids in the house. So do you. We're deadly serious about it. You know what I mean? Because the alternative, if a young child stumbles onto something, a loaded weapon, it's really easy for something horrible to happen. Yeah. And the reality is that if something goes bump in the night and I need access to my firearm, I have a gun lockbox that's in my dresser. I can have that thing open in sub 3 seconds and engage any target that's coming through the window or the door. And that's just the truth. And that takes just a tiny bit of little proficiency to do it. And so to me, we want to reframe that same tactical mindset that people think about protection and self-defense with that. So that's just one example, that we're leaning into, but, we're working with some of the largest and most influential nonprofits, brands, and other organizations in the country, both that are corporate, that are consumer side of things, to really make a difference. And that, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. But we always say, purpose is relative. I'd never tell anybody to lean into something that they're not personally passionate about, that's not relevant or doesn't make sense for their company or organization. But we all care about stuff. We all care about the people in our communities. We all care about our families, and the list goes on and on. And so lean into and try to make a meaningful impact on areas that are important to you and then the people you care about, and to your customers if you're a business owner or entrepreneur,
right.
Nothing else.
What advice would you give to, I'm 35. I've had the honor and privilege of being in some really awesome companies, and working for a really great one right now, and being a quote unquote influencer. I hate that fucking term for myself, but being a content creator. So understanding how different brands work, being very, very, very close friends with many entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders, co-founders. I get it. I understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I guess I consider myself one, in that regard. What's some advice you would offer to, a young Waco who's leaving the service, let's say in 2025, 2026? What's some good advice to a young Waco who's getting out as an E4, E3, or a young Rob who's getting out as a captain, 5-6 years of service in 2026? Like what are a couple things you would offer as a recommendation as they try to get started in their business journey?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. Mentorship is incredibly important. Finding mentors, whether you work in a company or whether you are an entrepreneur, that's your journey, whatever it is, finding incredible people who have experience in, it doesn't even have to be the thing that you want to pursue, but can share and impart their wisdom with you is so powerful. So mentorship is incredible. And there's so many programs that are out there now and today that can help set you up for that. What is it? ACP, America's Corporate Partnerships. They do incredible work on that front. And they have a whole veteran program, which is awesome. Amazing. So the mentorship piece is one. The other thing is lean into the existing programs that are there. When I was first an entrepreneur, there were virtually no programs that were set up for, veteran entrepreneurs. There was nothing like that exists. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was when I first started my business. If I'm just being very candid, like that.
You just wanted to get dirty devil dog.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it just spoke to me. And so finding and tapping into available programs that are out there. And again, it could be a formal program at a college. It could be a trade school. It could be a nonprofit like Warrior Rising, or pick any of the other ones.
Great guys.
Yeah. They're great group. And there's plenty of them that are out there, but tapping into those resources it's such an edge that we have over civilian counterparts or other people that don't have access to those free programs for you, your spouse, your kids. In some instances, it's really, really amazing. So that's another thing. The other piece is one of the best ways to figure out what you want to do is to try a lot of different things. And so getting that perspective is really important. I'll give you an example. JP Morgan, when several years ago, they had the goal, like, we want to hire, and this is with, like, I think Blackstone was involved in this also. They wanted to hire 100,000 veterans. Congratulations, fast forward a few years, they did it. Awesome. But initially the problem is turnover was like 80%. So cool, you hired them, but people had no idea what they wanted to do.
Amazon was the same way when I was at Amazon.
That's right. You landed a gig in finance or marketing or ops. Well, come to find out you hate marketing, or you hate ops, or you're not good at it, or you don't even know what it is for that matter. And so they flipped the program to where people would go around, and over the course of a year, they try all these different business units out and have a role to figure out what they really want. And hallelujah, the numbers flipped, 80% retention, 20% turnover. And so oftentimes we have this vision of what we think we want to do, transitioning out of the service, but expose yourselves to new things, whether that's an internship, there's Skill Bridge, there's Soft Fellows, but there's a lot of different programs that you can get access to, which is really incredible. And then the last thing I would say is people underestimate the value of their network. The network of people that you have around you, being able to reach out to somebody and them then connect you with somebody else. And then in pursuit of something bigger than yourself, building a business, landing a job, an industry you want to be in, the power of the network is absolutely incredible. And you see it at institutions like West Point. If you went there, all my buddies from West Point, doesn't matter if you didn't know each other. There's this instant bond, and hey, I've got your back piece of it.
It's like a vetting. It's like
that's right.
I say this to many grads. It's like when you meet another West Pointer or another academy, unfortunately, but you meet another academy alum.
Sometimes that happens,
Yeah, right. You happen to have to work with a Navy guy, but when I was deployed and you interact with an Air Force grad or a Navy grad, or I see an Air Force grad here in Vegas, or I meet another West Pointer out through work or whatever that may be. There's just like this internal vet that happens, and you're on kind of a level playing field, and you respect each other, even though you may not know each other, but
right.
You share something almost more common than just a veteran experience. And I fucking love that. That's why I started Drunk Old Grad, to highlight that, to embellish that experience and to show how great it is, and almost, to kind of sell for the academy almost, but it started as a meme page. But that's, to your point, it's like, there's nothing better than that, in that experience. And if people can find that for themselves, it's huge.
Yeah, no, it's so important, and you can find it in other ways post-service.
100%.
I mentioned the Harvard Executive Program that I did. I've done a few up there now, and it doesn't matter your background, where you came from. If you're a part, it doesn't have to be Harvard. There's tons of different versions of this all across the country. It doesn't have to be higher education. There's lots of things you could do, whether it's a trade school or otherwise. But there's just this aspirational thing and trust that's built in there, that if you reach out to another person who was in that program, maybe they weren't even in your class, they're willing to support you because there is that kind of stamp of approval as a part of it. And I think that is something that, we don't talk nearly enough about the transition process,
right.
The other thing I would say is purpose. There's tremendous nuance in purpose. Most of us are probably not going to find a huge amount of satisfaction and purpose and calling in our job. There's a lot of people that won't ever find that. I feel very fortunate to really enjoy and love what I do, building businesses and working with amazing people and partners. But that's okay. At the end of the day, who cares? Mm-hmm. But accept that may be a possibility for you. And if that's something that, if you're not passionate about work in the traditional sense, that's okay. Find something else to fill your cup. Find something else that's going to make you excited to get out of the bed, make you proud to be your kid's dad, whether it's coaching a little league team or being involved in the church or something, again, whatever extracurricular that thing is, or being involved in a veteran nonprofit. Again, there's infinite examples of this, but being open to what that journey can look like, and not allowing yourself to be put in this categorized box of where you must find meaning out of life is so important, because I see so many people that they're just a hamster on a wheel, spinning, and it's so easy to get burned out, and it's so easy to never really understand what your North Star is. And life's going to be hard regardless. It's going to be, we're going to hit headwinds along the way and struggles and have setbacks, but the pragmatic aspects of that, I think, are something that we could do from a transition program. We could do a much better job educating people, not just young people getting out, but people of all ages getting out. Because on the other end of that, E3, E4, or captain getting out of the Army. On the other end of that, you spent a whole lifetime serving in the military, and you're institutionalized in some respect. So you need to figure out on the other side of it that, hey, no one cares that you were a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. They don't give a shit about that at all. So figuring out how to translate that into engaging, people in the real world is something that's really important.
No, I love that. Yeah, as soon as you take that uniform off, you're right back to the start. No one cares. To your point, if you were in 06, it's more about like, what can you deliver in business, and how can you be as a family man, and how can you be as a citizen? And I think a lot of military people have a tough time with that, because when you're at a certain rank too, there's a little bit of ego there. Regardless if you want to accept it or not. It's just, you love being the colonel. You love
and it's understandable. Right.
Yeah. And you worked your ass off to get in that position, I would hope. And you deserve to be honored in that way. And it's tough. And I think my father had a tough time kind of not regrouping, but when he retired, it was tough. He did 26 years in service. It's fucking tough. Yeah. Generals experienced that. E5s experienced that, majors experienced that. And I think I like to think that guys like you are kind of looking to fix that through the Legion or whatever opportunity you have to kind of change that narrative, so that people continue to still feel proud of their time in uniform, but also find another outlet, because there is so much more to life after you serve. Especially, life's so short. Like we see so much crazy shit happen with shootings and just crazy events, catastrophes, whatever you name it. Like, take advantage of some resources you have on that transition piece to find something. Not to close on like a somber note, because like we'll close on like a happier note, but could you kind of talk about like the suicide prevention stuff you're doing at a high level, and kind of like where you see that going in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure most listeners on this understand, that the suicide, issue in the military and veteran community is, nothing short of an epidemic. And, despite spending more money than we ever have, VA and DOD and otherwise, the most recent year's report came out where suicide still went up. So it tells us that what we're doing is clearly not working. We've got 20 plus years of data to tell us that. And so the fundamental piece to how we're thinking about suicide prevention is all about upstream solutions. It's how do we get left of boom? It's preventive in nature. It's looking for opportunities to create all these design interventions that can prevent somebody from getting to the point of crisis to begin with. And a big part of it is this whole health approach that we take with the individual, the human at the center of it. And, the obvious factors that we have there are physical health, mental health, of course. Those are the ones we always talk about. Mm-hmm. But then the other part of that is career health, relationship health, financial health, community health. There's all these other factors that play a huge role in, whether somebody might be experiencing suicidal ideation. Now, of course, there's substance abuse, there's, TBI, there's a whole host of, other things. But again, that kind of falls into the physical, health piece. So there's all these other opportunities that we have that we can help somebody to prevent them from ultimately getting to the point of crisis by making sure that they don't get kicked out of their home, or their car is repossessed and they can't get to work, which is then going to send them spiraling because they're not going to be able to provide for their family or put food on the table for their kids and so on, or whatever scenario they're dealing with. But then the other piece of this is around brain health. And I try to use that term as frequently as possible, and not mental health, because mental health, there's this shame, there's this stigma associated with it. And brain health, at the end of the day, this gray matter up here is an organ like anything else in our body. Mm-hmm. And we need to treat it as such to shift that cultural mindset to where, if you bang up your knee, what do? You throw some ice on it, you get an x-ray. If you got to get surgery, you get your surgery, you do your rehab. Nobody thinks you're weak or soft or anything like that. But if you've got something going on up here, it's quite different, where people will think that, oh, well, what's wrong with you? And there's this shame associated with it. And there's a reluctance to ask for help. Heart health, no one thinks twice about that. It's different. And so that is a big part of culturally where we want to shift. And I'll tell you that the good news is that, the younger generation is much more open and transparent about mental health, about brain health than my generation and even yours in many respects, in terms of just the, different ages that we have from, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, runs the spectrum. So that's a really great signal. But the bad news is that, we're still seeing, these suicide rates at an all-time high, and we've got to do we've got to do a lot more around that. And I think that one of the things that we're doing, some of the work that we did with a lot of the work that we did with the American Legion and Columbia University with the Columbia Protocol is we took a community health-based approach. And so with the Columbia Protocol, we, in about 11-month period of time, we trained just over 13,000 Legionnaires and staff on the Columbia Protocol. And so the whole idea, it's a community health-based approach, and think about it's CPR for the brain. Every year, 100,000 to 200,000 people are still alive because somebody in a room, on a plane, wherever, knew CPR and could administer chest compressions, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation while first responders came. The chance of survivability if CPR is administered pretty immediately goes up by a factor of 3. And so it's the same thing with this. If more of us that are out here in our country, not just military, this is not just a military problem, an issue that we're dealing with. If more people can identify the signs and signals that are there and have a conversation to get somebody to the support they need, we're all better off for it. Again, it's no different than CPR. And when you look at every year, about 3+ million people in this country get trained on CPR. And imagine if we had that same pipeline of people being trained on brain health, mental health, suicide prevention. So, and also the other thing it does, when we did that training at the Legion, one of the most profound things about it is it started to normalize the conversation. People were coming forward and sharing their own personal journeys that they attempted suicide once, twice, 3 times, in some instances and more. And it started to erode some of that shame that we talked about. And it made people comfortable about, hey, you know what? There's not something wrong with me. I just need to work on something to resolve it. Because oftentimes we sit there and we're like, well, I'm broken. What's wrong with me? I can't get fixed because I've been through this ringer over and over again and I can't find a solution. And the reality is you're no more broken than everybody else. You've just got an issue, just like, the alignment's off on your car, or, or there's an issue with a valve in your heart. And so we need to reframe. A big part of what we're doing is thinking about how we reframe that from a brain health standpoint so that we can apply science and evidence-based, approaches to this versus, kind of the soft science and things like that. Because at the end of the day, like I said, this is an organ just like anything else up here, and we can do so much better if we collectively approach it, from a community.
Yeah, I mean, as an alcoholic myself, I say that with a lot of respect, but it's true. There is such a huge substance abuse program in this substance abuse issue in this veteran community of ours, Waco. How much do you see just basic understanding, education of what, we're doing to ourselves, drinking and all the other narcotics and drugs out there? I feel like it's just such a huge issue where people are just over drinking. And I'm not talking about a couple glasses of wine with dinner. I'm talking the extended periods of, drinking, and then the negative effects from that depressant and that grief and all that, just from your own mind. What is there anything being done to combat that? And just going back to the basics of physical fitness, working out, stepping away from the phone, which I'm going to do after this. I'm going to walk my dog for 30 minutes. It's going to be a beautiful walk because the sun's setting here in Vegas and it's finally cool. And I can unplug from work and everything else going on and the children, and just kind of have 30 minutes to myself with my dog. Are we going back to the basics, for some of this education and this training?
I think substance abuse is such a tough one. There's a hereditary factor to that, which can be really tough. But I think a lot of it comes down to my dad. He was an alcoholic while we were young growing up. Fortunately, he ended up being 28 years. He AA, that worked for him, really well. But it was amazing to see that shift and that change, and it saved his life and our relationship with him. But I think the substance abuse piece is really tough. I haven't seen anybody who has a silver bullet, for that. I will say that, some of the breakthrough therapies and some of the, not just psychedelic assisted therapy and those types of things, but also some of the technology that's actually working on theta brainwaves that impacts the different frequencies that your brain recovers, that you can get in a flow state and a whole host of things. So there's some really interesting technology that, I am not a PhD, not a neuroscientist, but
maybe
happy to recommend.
Maybe
I was going to say, happy to recommend some folks that can talk really intelligently to you about it.
Yeah.
That is such a cool thing that is we're at the forefront of really getting a lot smarter about, and that's going to be amazing to see what happens. Not just in the next 18 months, but in the next 5 years, 10 years, and how we're going to be able to completely leapfrog medicines and things of that nature, I think, and we're actually going to be able to directly impact what's going on up here.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and being a Vegas resident since 2019, I've seen the city. I've seen the last 6 months out here, and I'm not sure if it was reflective in MCon ticket sales at all yet, but it is down a little bit, and I've seen it since COVID, where the sports books are a little less crowded. Everyone's betting on their phones a little more outside the state. There's not this desire, I feel like, from the younger generation, the 25s and under, to maybe fast mobilize and go to Vegas like it was for our generation and our period in 2015 and maybe before that. So I just feel like maybe the younger generation, with all the shit we give them and their attitudes and them always being on their fucking phone, it's funny because they're drinking less, they're partying less. And for all the grief and the fun we make fun of, or the shit we give the younger generation for always being on their phone and doing whatever with their hairstyles in the gym, broccoli style, like, I feel like they're just a little smarter with what they're putting in their bodies because of maybe the awareness they're getting from always being on their phone and what they're reading. They're not as educated as Waco and Rob were at that age, where I was just chugging Smirnoff Ice and doing fucking, all the twisted teas to the dome, just because I wanted that feeling and to hang with the boys, which was amazing. I wouldn't change anything. But yeah, I feel like the younger generation, those soldiers, those Airmen, Marines, Space Cadets, whatever, like everyone, I don't know, maybe they're just a little smarter than we were.
I think, every older generation likes to talk trash, to the younger generation. And listen, it was very much part of the culture, in Marine infantry units of like, let's party and rip beers at night. Then we're up, PT.
Nothing else to fucking do, dude. You might as well.
5 a.m. Let's go, whatever. It was that work hard, play hard mentality. But, I think that young people have access to information that we never did in a way that they never did. And to your point, I don't know if they're smarter or they're just acting on the intelligence that they have at their fingertips, or where the drinking significantly less is a part of. But I think it's great. I think it's amazing. I will say that you see a lot of people that are can sometimes shift one vice to another, and so hopefully it's not a function of, hey, drinking is down, but then other types of substances are being used more, and that's a piece. And so I have no data to suggest one way or the other on that at the moment, but I think that's an important piece to kind of look at, as well, and just make sure that culturally we're preaching responsibility and we're preaching things that tie back to moderation. And on that's a good way to end on a high note, right? Yeah. It's like my big man, my 2-year-old big man, come ripping in.
Hey, he's more than welcome to say hey.
Hey, Owen, you want to come down and say hi? My wife grabbed him. I want to text her and be like, "Come on down."
Yeah, no, for real. Let's end on a positive note here.
Yes, right.
With that, and before Owen gets here, because I want to see the little dude, what are you going to be at Army Navy? Or what's your take on Army Navy? Yes. Do you give me your picks for the game if you're able to?
I think your pick. Yeah, I mean, Navy looks really good this year so far. I know. I'm sorry. I gotta be true. I gotta speak my truth. Okay.
Yeah. Speak your truth, Waco.
I got real serious about that.
Yeah.
I think that. I think Navy's going to look good this year. But listen, we saw last year what happened. Army was heavily favored, and what happened? The rivalry games
shift.
Crazy things can happen, and there's a long way to go until we get to December.
I think we're still over 60 days out. Yeah. Okay. I respect it. I hope to see you there. I hope to see you in Baltimore.
Yeah, for sure.
Come to my after 100%. Party, maybe.
We will. We'll come do it upright.
Yeah. Is Owen coming?
I don't think I'm going to bring Owen. No.
Okay. No, is Owen coming? Is Owen?
Gonna... I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to. I think
okay.
he was throwing a fit because he come down, wife got him up. So I think she's just
all
with
good.
him and not on the phone. Yeah. So
all good.
I apologize to everyone out there who really wanted to meet Owen.
We'll get Owen next time when Waco's on and we can do something in person. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is an awesome conversation about entrepreneurship, being a good veteran, a good business leader, a good teammate. Anything, in closing you want to impart on the awesome Bold American experience listeners and or anything, where people can find you, kind of anything along those lines?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I love Bold American. I love just the whole notion of it. And I think the only thing that I would impart is, we are all Americans, and, we live in a really interesting time where, there's a tendency to be divisive. And like, I love the veteran community, and particularly like what we did with MCon is that we check all the other nonsense at the door. At the end of the day, we all want a lot of the same things: to be able to spend time with our families, to have great careers, jobs, go on cool trips. And we want our country to be amazing. And it's still hands down. It's not even a comparison. This is the best place on the planet to live. If anybody who's traveled even a little bit understands that. We've got our issues like everywhere, but this place, America, is incredible. And I hope people continue to appreciate that and continue to get after it. Whatever you care about in your community, find a way to contribute and give back and do something substantive. And that will take you a long, long way in life.
I think so too. Well said. And in closing, people want an easy win or like a quick solution to everything. Right. And, I see it in Vegas. People want to win big very, very quickly. And I feel like, as a veteran, if you decide to be an entrepreneur and you go the business route, consistency will win always. If it takes a year, if it takes 2 years, if it takes 3 years, just put your head down, work hard, be humble. And I think good things will come from that. And, that's how I did it with Drunk Old Grad 10 years later. Now I have the fortune and the blessing to have a Barstool show and work with amazing people like Connor Crean and Ryan Mannion on this incredible media outlet, this amazing company that was built from scratch by Dave Portnoy 20 plus years ago. But just keep working hard. And that's just one piece of my life. And I feel like, as veterans, I think we can just continue to educate each other and lift each other up too. Like when people have bad days, like fucking help a homie out and lift him up. And sometimes there's a shitty few days, a shitty few weeks. And that's what it fucking takes though, to be successful and to be, an American. And everyone's gone through it. And I've gone through it, and you've been great on some personal stuff off the side too. And, I hope more veterans and friends and family of those serving can hear that, because life sucks sometimes, but just keep pushing through. It'll get better. I promise you. And hopefully one day I can share some of those experiences on this show. But with that, Waco, thank you so much for your time today, sir. It's an honor to have you on. You're a great friend. You're like an older bro. And you've just done so much to impact the veteran community in a good way. You're a really good behind the scenes guy. That's how I pitch you to people. I'm like, no, Waco, he's like the behind the scenes guy to a lot of shit that you see, that you know of, but you might not know who he is. But that's why I wanted you on, because
I appreciate it.
You have such a good story. You're such a good connector. And more importantly, you're a great father and husband, and you're a grunt. So all the more reason to have you on. But thank you so much. Find Waco Hoover where you can, guys. Look him up. And with that, we're out. Go Army.
Bye, brother.
All right. Thank you to Waco Hoover for joining the show. All right, Ryan, any caveats? Anything we missed?
I think that's it. Go Phils. Hope they win today. Yeah.
All right. I have two caveats. Speaking of Hegseth, I do enjoy that the last few weeks, it feels like we've seen a lot of those videos. Maybe they've been drug smugglers who the videos of these speedboats just getting completely annihilated. these criminals, these hard and fast criminals, getting just completely smoked out of the ocean by our drones or whatever weapon system. I do enjoy those videos. And then also a article came out that there is a new movie that's going to come out with Adam Driver and Anne Hathaway. And I didn't realize till today, till I read the article, directed by Ron Howard, who I love Ron Howard, but it is the story. It's called Alone at Dawn, a book written in 2019 about Air Force combat controller John Chapman. If you don't know his story, I'm not going to go into it now, but basically this dude like single-handedly, fought for his life, but in doing so earned himself the Medal of Honor. But I didn't know anything about this movie, and then I'm reading about it, and it's actually a real life, and the two main roles are kind of reversed, but it's a real life Courage Under Fire starring Denzel Washington and Meg Ryan. Do you know that movie?
I know Courage Under Fire. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Courage Under Fire, Denzel Washington plays the officer who is investigating Meg Ryan's character's actions during the Gulf War for the Medal of Honor. And it's an amazing movie. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. It's an awesome, awesome movie. And in the movie, she would be the first female recipient of the Medal of Honor in combat. And I'm going into too much detail if you've already seen the movie. But anyway, in this story, it's the true story of Anne Hathaway's character of an intelligence officer who goes to great lengths to ensure that Adam Driver's character, John Chapman, receives the Medal of Honor. So I love Anne Hathaway. She's a Jersey girl through and through. I'm not a huge fan of Adam Driver, and that's more so because of things I've heard. Although he is a Marine, I've heard some things about him that I don't love, that I think he tries to hide behind, and we won't go into too much detail there. But I'm interested to see the movie. So sign me up for anything Anne Hathaway, who, shout to Anne Hathaway. She just continues. She looks better and better every year that goes by. So good for her.
She does look good. Yeah. So, all right. Love it.
All right. That'll do it. I will see if you're there at the Army game. Come say hello this weekend against Charlotte. I'll be there. In the meantime, take care. Make it a great week.